Able to Judge Them, an Outstanding Scholars Research Reflection on the British Gothic Casebook. In June 1796, the British critic wrote on Matthew Lewis's The Monk, "Lust, murder, incest, and every atrocity that can disgrace human nature brought together without the apology of probability, or even possibility, for their introduction." However, in the following February, the European magazine wrote that Matthew Lewis's The Monk, quote, "which has neither originality, morals, nor probability to recommend it, has excited and will still continue to excite the curiosity of the public. Such is the irresistible energy of genius." Hello, my name is Bert Kokstad. I'm in my second year of the Combined Honors English Language and Literature and Greek and Roman Studies program at the University of Windsor. Typically, you can find me haunting the shelves of Letty Library or poring over my favorite copy of Euripides' Tragedies. Today, however, I'll discuss my role and involvement in the Outstanding Scholars program, specifically working on the British Gothic Casebook project under Dr. Carol Margaret Davison. The British Gothic Casebook project entails compiling, editing, annotating, and later publishing various contemporary periodical reviews of British Gothic texts when they first appeared in print for public consumption. The project scope includes various kinds of British Gothic texts, including novels, dramas, and shorter tales. Some works considered in this comprehensive compendium include Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto, Matthew Lewis's The Monk, and Anne Radcliffe's The Italian. This project aims to produce a physical sourcebook allowing scholars access to previously disparate periodical reviews of such texts, stressing the highly varied receptions of such works when they first appeared in print, and particularly engaging with the growing academic fields of print culture, periodical history, and reception history, the last of which offers keen insight into how various contemporary or older works may have influenced the text directly being received. Today, I have presently been tasked with locating, transcribing to digital documents, and annotating periodical reviews concerned with the Gothic works of Matthew Lewis, such as The Monk and The Castle Spectre. The British Gothic. From working on this project, I have engaged with a web of opportunities and cultivated new critical skills that have contributed to my success in the Outstanding Scholars program and my greater academic pursuits. I find it fitting to move through these opportunities and skills using the language of the Gothic, or broadly supernatural novel. The esoteric knowledge. One of the most interesting topics I've learned about is the strong and frequently negative response to British Gothic works when they were first published compared to the relatively lauded position they now hold. Because this project specifically concerns the readership of these texts, I've learned about the absolute necessity to orient oneself to this aspect of literary analysis. No text exists in a vacuum, but is rather deeply informed by the social, cultural, and historical context in which it is produced. I hope this knowledge does not remain so esoteric after the publication of the British Gothic Casebook. The companion spirit. I've also been engaging critically with various databases and digital historical archives. I relied heavily on the University of Windsor's connections to ProQuest and HathiTrust. ProQuest and HathiTrust are incredibly wide-reaching search engines with access to specific databases necessary to find reviews. Without these companion spirits, moving forward would have been much more challenging. The Revelatory Diary. Working alongside Dr. Davison, I've also been guided in approaching literary criticism concerning these British Gothic texts. For example, in pursuing new reviews and mentions of Lewis's The Monk, I have found interesting and academically rigorous studies of his life and works. The very newly published Matthew Gregory Lewis, The Gothic and Romantic Literary Culture by Dale Townshend pointed my attention to new directions and further sources for reviews. However, I can also engage with undergraduate research at other universities. Enrico Foglio, a since graduated undergraduate student at McGill University, wrote the incredibly interesting and informative The Great Monk Controversy, Religious, Moral, and Literary Criticism on the Monk, 1796 to 98, published in the McGill Department of English Undergraduate Review, entitled The Channel. Without these revelatory diaries, I would not have been made aware of the necessary historical and biographical content of Lewis's works. The Haunted Castle. Fortunately, I've also had the great opportunity to meet many people who offered invaluable help in the assisting with the British Gothic Casebook. For example, I've had the excellent opportunity to purchase many of the works that have been or will be covered in the British Gothic Casebook at Biblioasis, a new and secondhand local bookstore that has developed an amazing relationship with the University of Windsor's own Department of English and Creative Writing. At the University of Windsor itself, Ms. Ann Kay and Mr. Martin Deck at the Literary Library have not only been incredibly helpful in my search for hard-to-find reviews, but also for their patience in answering my questions about how to navigate the various ways to research through the library. Both Biblioasis and the library have been my regular haunts while conducting my research into Lewis's works, those specifically referred to by the reviews of his time, making me a kind of castle spectre. The supernatural ability. In working on the British Gothic Casebook, I've also developed various important academic and professional skills. For example, I have sharpened my critical thinking with regards to historical documents and texts, their biases and orientation, and their usefulness in this specific project. By extension, with this honed critical eye, I've also needed to conduct my own cultural, literary, and socio-historical research. In order to effectively annotate documents, I've needed to ensure that I have a well-founded understanding of the referential material therein, as well as the surrounding setting of the text more broadly. For example, soon I will specifically be examining the periodical presses themselves, their political orientations, and their audiences, as all three of these qualities will inform the kinds of reviews they will produce of certain Gothic works. Alongside annotations, I've also developed skills critical to the process and practices of scholarly editing. Appropriate scholarly editing is necessary when dealing with historical documents, as it involves, for example, an understanding of when to correct spelling or ensure that contemporary spellings are retained when contemporary variants are being used. Overall, I've undoubtedly gained a deeper understanding and appreciation for how literary studies are conducted and the versatility that studies in literature can really take on. Research in the arts and humanities remains a necessary feature of the modern day, as research in the arts and humanities continually informs us of our own historical desire to create art and engage with one another. Using the Kolbein experiential learning cycle model, I will take you through my first task working on the British Gothic casebook and how I had to break the spine to really get reading. I felt incompetent. Not 1 week after I was brought on to work on the British Gothic Casebook project did I misinterpret the simple instructions Dr. Davison gave me at our first meeting. I needed to orient myself to the many digitized periodical reviews of 4 of Lewis's Gothic works and their transcribed counterparts. The main thrust of this initial work was to rename and reorganize the files. Simple enough, right? Well, not so simple for me, it seems. I ended up overcomplicating the filing system, making it far more confusing than it needed to be. Being the first task I was assigned, I did have enough foresight to verify with Dr. Davison if this system was what she was imagining. It was not, and I was devastated. I was completely disappointed in myself for having already fumbled such a straightforward task that required no skill or knowledge of the actual content of the project, but simply the way the files were organized on a hard drive. That thin, familiar blade of self doubt found a home in my stomach that day. However, once I set aside my melodrama and silenced my vocal inner critic, I immediately observed the necessity of such open communication. Though I had made a mistake in organizing the files, at least I had enough foresight to be completely transparent with my work. Instead of remaining doubtful of my work and going through all of the documents with this detrimental flaw in their organization, I discussed with Dr. Davison what she had envisioned and required of this organization system, the real axis mundi for the project moving forward. Also, I observed that her reaction to my error acknowledged that organizing so many files would be a work in progress. Her value of open communication and, again, complete transparency in the progress of my work reminded me that other students had been working on this project before me. Dr. Davidson has been used to working with and teaching students how to deal with and sort these documents. I thought critically about the means of organization required for such work. Once I had been corrected on how to sort the files, I ensured that everything remained as consistent as possible. I thought about how, though seemingly unrelated to the meat of the academic work itself, organization and by extension reference management is critical for the stability and integrity of further work. I especially consider the value of such work in literary studies concerning contemporary readership. Keeping accurate notes on the names and dates of publications is critical for how these documents will be assessed and measured later, as I am presently doing in the annotation process. I experimented with different ways of organization as well. Not only did I do my search for additional periodical reviews to add to the ever-growing database of primary sources I had inherited, but I also examined other resources that would allow me even more dynamic referencing options. For example, I adopted the Zotero application to complement the simple hard drive database. The Zotero database will enable me to search within the growing primary source database and, importantly, allow me to filter documents according to their name, year, and place of publication. Though I occasionally feel that thin blade of doubt in other areas of my involvement in the project, I'm incredibly proud of how I have transformed that initial stumble into one of my strongest foundations in my engagement with the British Gothic Casebook and my research thereafter. Into the awful sublime. Peering into the misty future, the British Gothic Casebook will turn away from Lewis to focus on other significant British Gothic writers. Ultimately, the project continues to collect, transcribe, and critically consider the contemporary readership of these Gothic works, motivated by the fact that the collection of such reviews will be able to illuminate, or rather nail down, that elusive quality that had drawn readers to the Gothic, as well as compelled many of them to condemn it. In conclusion, I leave you with an important quote. As Lewis writes in The Monk, an author, whether good or bad, or between both, is an animal whom everybody is privileged to attack. For though all are not able to write books, all conceive themselves able to judge them. Matthew Lewis, The Monk, Volume 1, Chapter 5. Thank you for watching and listening. Please scan the QR code if you'd like to see my references for this presentation, as well as the second QR code to look at Dr. Margaret Davison's recent scholarship. Again, thank you. Thank you